Let's crack open Apple's 2025 proxy statement. Now, I know what you're probably thinking, some dense, boring legal document, right? But what if I told you this is basically a secret user manual for one of the most valuable companies on Earth? It's a blueprint that tells us not just where Apple's been, but exactly where it's headed. And to prove it, let's just start with a puzzle. What on earth does the CEO's paycheck have to do with the future of AI? I know, it sounds totally random, but the answer is buried right inside this document. And trust me, it reveals everything about Apple's priorities. So stick with me, we're going to connect those dots. Okay, here's our game plan. We'll start with the basics, what this report card even is. Then we'll meet the people actually calling the shots. After that, we follow the money, dive into the big shareholder debates, and finally piece it all together to see what Apple's future looks like. It's kind of like peeling an onion. Each layer gets us closer to the core. All right, first things first. Before we can deconstruct the blueprint, we gotta know what we're actually looking at. This whole thing is built on something called a proxy statement. So what the heck is it? Well, put simply, it's an official packet that gets mailed out to shareholders before their big annual meeting. It's their guide for voting on huge company decisions, and it is jam-packed with details on performance, who gets paid what, and who's on the board. You can really think of it as the instruction manual for the whole company. So, let's talk about the people. Who is actually steering this multi-trillion-dollar ship? That would be the board of directors. And their collective expertise? It's not just a list of fancy resumes. It's a massive clue about what Apple thinks is most important. This right here shows you what Apple values at the absolute highest level. They're not just looking for generic business skills. No. They are explicitly seeking out deep expertise in things like global operations, innovation, and, you'll want to pay attention to this, privacy and security and the environment. These aren't just buzzwords on a corporate site. These are the non-negotiable skills required to even be in the room. Now let's put some faces to those skills. Of course, you've got Tim Cook, a certified genius in worldwide operations. But look closer. You've got Art Levinson, the CEO of a biotech firm called Calico. You've got Alex Gorsky, the former CEO of Johnson & Johnson. The fact that there is such a heavy presence of leaders from health and biotech, that's not an accident. That tells you a ton about where Apple sees its future growth. This is way more than just a phone company now. Okay, let's keep building on this. This next part is always a hot topic, executive pay. But instead of just gawking at the giant numbers, we're going to use them as a lens to understand Apple's core philosophy on what success and value actually mean to them. And you know what? That philosophy is incredibly simple, and it's powerful. It all boils down to these three words: pay for performance. This isn't just a suggestion, it's the central pillar of their entire system. Bottom line, if the company wins and the shareholders win, then the executives win. Simple as that. So the big question is, has this philosophy actually worked? Well, let's take a look at the track record. Since Tim Cook took over as CEO way back in 2011, the results have been, well, absolutely staggering. 1,908%. No, that is not a typo. That is the cumulative total shareholder return under his leadership. It's a number that has totally crushed the S&P 500 and has grown Apple's market cap by more than $3 trillion. This one number is all the justification they need for their entire pay-for-performance model. And Apple is dead serious about this. For Tim Cook, a whopping 75% of his long-term stock awards are completely dependent on the company's performance. For the other top execs, it's still a full half, 50%. The message here could not be clearer. Results are what get you paid. But, it's not all record profits and smooth sailing. This is where things get really, really interesting. Every year, shareholders can submit their own proposals for a vote. And this is where the biggest, most intense debates about Apple's future and its role in the world play out right in the open. Let's kick things off with proposal number 4, which cuts right to the heart of the whole AI debate. The people behind this are basically saying, hey, AI has massive potential, but it also comes with some really serious risks. So they're demanding Apple put out a report on the ethical use of AI and where it gets its data from. Okay, so here's Apple's official clapback. The board is recommending a vote against this proposal. Their argument is that the report is unnecessary because they say they're already super transparent about their privacy practices. And then they make this key distinction. They argue that the proposal is really aimed at OpenAI's ChatGPT, not their own built-in Apple intelligence, which they see as a totally separate thing. And AI is not the only battlefield. The other major flashpoint is a proposal demanding that Apple completely halt its diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. You probably know them as DEI. The shareholders who brought this forward are pointing to what they see as rising legal risks and recent court decisions as their main reason. And you guessed it, Apple's board has a crystal clear position here, too. They recommend voting against this proposal as well. Their logic is that the board and its various committees are already on top of all legal and regulatory risks. In their eyes, the systems they already have in place are more than enough to handle these concerns. So, we've peeled back the layers. We've looked at the people, the money, and the big public fights. What does this whole blueprint actually tell us about where Apple is going in 2025 and beyond? Here's the bottom line. This blueprint shows us a leadership team that is obsessed with health tech and innovation. It reveals a strategy that ties paychecks directly to shareholder success. Period. It shines a big spotlight on the major battles ahead, these intense public debates over AI ethics and social policy, and woven through all of it is the one core value Apple keeps coming back to, that user privacy is a fundamental human right. And that brings us right back to where we started. We have deconstructed Apple's official game plan for 2025. We know who they're listening to, we know where the money is going, and we know which battles they're choosing to fight. But the question I really want to leave you with is this. Looking at this whole blueprint, what's the one thing you think they've missed? What's not in the plan that should be?